Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fearless Now. And today we are talking about trends in EdTech, what you should expect from the future of education for the next generation. So, as Mike and I have been, working on our platform, we also do a lot of research around EdTech and all the trends that are going on. And EdTech's goal is to really improve the learning experience for students in some way, shape, or form. Education technology has the opportunity to improve learning outcomes for hundreds of millions of children and adults. And many of these trends are poised to disrupt the field of education as we know it. And so those are the things that Mike and I think about a lot. So we thought it was really cool that we've stumbled upon a pretty comprehensive list. So we wanted to share that with you, and we'd love our community to share anything new and innovative that they've learned about in the world of education and technology. So Mike, take it away.
I'll kick this off. So in the last couple of episodes, we also mentioned these two entities called, maybe I'm not pronouncing right, edx.org or edx.org, which is a combination of MIT and like other top-notch universities that allow you to take a course that is usually reserved for the enrolled student, and you can do it online. So 2u.com. So 2u is a big public company. They acquired for $860 million. They acquired edx.org, and now they are the biggest. The acronym is MOOC, Massive Online Open Course. That's what MOOC stands for. So, which allows anybody, doesn't matter what age, is to get a micro bachelor's degree, a micro master's degree, just by focusing on those topics that they really care about. So if I really want to get a certificate in AI or machine learning or VR, I don't necessarily need to go for a master's degree in that, right? Because I have my business knowledge that I already acquired. I just go in that particular side, that particular topic. So the very first item that's highlighted in the link that we are sharing is extended reality. So as a technology person, let me describe a couple of things around, because we're familiar now with augmented reality. Mm-hmm. We're familiar with virtual reality, right? And then there's this concept of extended reality. So if you remember Google Glass, I have some sexy pictures of me in that hardware. It was never meant to be a commercial success for Google. It was an opportunity for Google to introduce a new platform for people to innovate and play with. Mm-hmm. The next one was Microsoft Halo. Right? So if you remember, the idea was that you have a transparent glass through which you see your world, and then there's an overlay. So that's what's meant by augmented reality. For example, your Siri or Google Assistant is also an augmented reality because you're using your hearing. So if you think about an earbud and you can talk to it, that augments your reality as well, right? It can give you a specific direction, make a right, make a left. So especially for people with disabilities, that's an important assistive device. Virtual reality is, if you're familiar with Oculus or if you're familiar with any type of fully immersive environment where you close your eye, not close your eyes, you cover your eyes with a screen, that's virtual reality. So a lot of people also just combine it into 360 video, and virtual reality for most people is the same thing, which is not exactly the case. The virtual reality is fully generated by a computer. So that computer generates the scene around you. So whenever if you turn left or right, you are seeing what computer generates. So that's virtual reality. The extended reality is the umbrella term for everything I just described. So it might be that as a student working in a lab mixing chemicals, you might have an overlay on top of your glasses, like a protective shield that tells you don't mix these two things, right? Or if you're building something, then it can tell you and suggest that when you are tightening a specific bolt, that it has to be a specific specific rating of how tight you make it, right? So all of these are now making its way into the educational space where it really was developed for the enterprise and for factories and everything else. Yeah. I also like to talk about Ready Player One, and I know Deepala has heard this recommendation multiple times. So grew up reading a lot of sci-fi, so really enjoyed that book. So Ready Player One, if you haven't read it and you are into sci-fi, highly recommend. Read it first and watch a movie. And for the people that are not really into sci-fi, I still highly recommend to watch it with the family as a larger kind of event, and think about like what is it that you're seeing, because like outside of the dystopian kind of dark part of it, what it shows is that as a student you put on your Oculus type glasses and you participate in a classroom, right? And instead of just seeing a 2D image, you are interacting with, in the movie it's avatars, but nothing stops us from scanning ourselves, like this technology exists today, where it can create a 360 representation of us, so that if we are in this virtual reality, we can see each other.
Yeah.
There's also a concept of a haptic suit, where if there's a, let's say if you're playing a game of shooting, you can feel the hit that you sustained. So this is not that far. There's a reason why Facebook paid $1 billion plus for technology that was relatively new. And recently Google released the augmented reality glasses with Ray-Ban. So all of this is coming sooner than many people realize, and we're now seeing some of this in EdTech.
That's a really good point. And that brings us to our second trend, which is innovation around K-12 homeschooling startups. So I was actually unaware on how much homeschooling was prevalent in the US, and interest in homeschooling in the US has been increasing for years. And in fact, homeschoolers currently make up 3.4% of American school-age children, which, I thought that number would be, much lower than what it is. And because of the pandemic, homeschooling has been an even hotter topic over the past 18 months or so. But the one big trend that we wanted to talk about there was just, it's no surprise that EdTech startups are stepping in and offering new tech-enabled homeschooling solutions. So imagine if there's like a blend of in-person and online learning experiences, and it separates the role of the instructor, maybe that's mom or caregiver at home, and facilitator coach, which is really cool. So.
And I've done a bit of research because, like, obviously I was a bit, I anticipated that regular public schools are not ready for the pandemic and virtual reading and virtual learning. Mm-hmm. We as a technology company, for us, like, we didn't skip a beat. Like, for us to work remotely with our previous team at the time when I was working in the company and that I started, we had 300 people plus all across the North America and Europe. So we, like, for us, Zoom conversations is like, yes, it's great to sit down and break bread, but I knew that the educational system was not ready, but the homeschooling systems were ready, right? Because for them, that was just how they conducted business. So I really looked into it, and it's an interesting hybrid model. There's a lot, obviously, online, but some of the more interesting ones that I looked into, they also would get kids together a couple times a year.
Yeah.
They were the more expensive ones because, like, that also requires travel for those kids in the beginning of the semester to build bonds, and then at the end of the semester to celebrate.
Yeah, it's a very cool concept. And Mike, you and our third trend that we're going to talk about, it's all about e-learning, and I know you started your career in building an e-learning platform. So tell us a little bit about kind of what it was and kind of where it is today. And it's probably no bigger education trend than e-learning these days in EdTech.
So I'll call out the founders of the company that I started with when I was third year in college, and started as a part-time Java applet developer, for those that might be. So Aro Henyan and Konstantin Henyan, I'll tag you in. Like, I know you guys are active on LinkedIn. So these two entrepreneurs, they had a vision that they've done a lot of educational events that at the time, the only way you could do it was in person, or you would print out CDs and I don't think DVDs were around, maybe. Yeah. And you would send out the DVDs. And then obviously the technology started to allow some of that distance learning. So it's obviously, it became our a part of our life, right? From Udemy to Coursera to just going on YouTube
Khan
and searching.
Academy to OutSchool, all of it.
FearlessPlus soon enough.
Exactly.
It just became a part of our lives, so that when we want to learn something, we either go to a free resource like Khan Academy, or we go to YouTube, or we go and pay a couple $2 and we learn something very useful. What's interesting is that we obviously at Fearless, we are researching quite a bit on different instructional design models. So like I'm very familiar with how the instructional design was presented and like the latest research that we've implemented in the software that we've built. So the company was Viewpoint, that became CertPoint, that was acquired by Infor, which is a huge company. By the time I was no longer with the company, but I'll do a humble brag. I went from junior Java applet developer to director of technology within that company, and architecting most of the stuff.
There you go.
So, we're obviously still learning from psychology and educational perspective on how to best present content. What we do know is that it should all be experiential. Some of it can be online, obviously, like through interactive interfaces and interactive experiences. It's even better in person. We're very interested to see how virtual reality and AI, and we'll talk about it, I think it's number 5, we'll give you our thoughts on how AI will continue to disrupt what's happening in education today.
Yeah. So trend number 4 is accessible education. And as of 2018, there were 258 million children worldwide not getting an education. Those are staggering numbers. Things are improving, though. That number is down from 378 million from the year 2000. There's still a long way to go in terms of accessibility. We at Fearless think about that a lot. And we are also working towards or working on a mission-driven aspect to democratizing education and democratizing access. So accessible education is top of mind for us, as are other EdTechs globally.
And some of this or a lot of it will be enabled by the reality that, similar to Africa, skipping desktop computers and laptops and going directly to phones.
Exactly.
I think the last time I looked at the statistic, I think out of the 7.7 billion, like 55% already have access to the internet in one way or another. It might be 2G, 3G, but between the efforts by Facebook and Google, and there's now satellites, like a network, I forgot the name for a second, but the idea is that within the next X number of years, which is probably 3 to 5, most of the world will be covered in internet accessibility, with obviously a lot of it being driven by the phone. So when we talk about democratization, is that they will have access, whoever wants to learn will have access to the internet. And now it's our job to think about like what kind of content we want to teach them based on our view of the future.
Yeah. And I will do a humble brag in that in our Fearless beta pilot over the summer, we had a student from Kenya, and we had 2 students from India that joined the pilot. And again, we had to work around some of the hours, but luckily we have a self-paced content platform that they were able to sort of seamlessly get through our content and join various, circles and coaching events and things like that on their time. So it was pretty cool. I mean, to think that we impacted somebody sitting in the middle of Africa and India was just simply amazing.
Australia and UK too.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right.
So I touched a little bit on the topic number 5, which is AI-enabled adaptive learning. For most people that don't really understand AI outside of Terminator, it's not quite that. It's if you think about like regular school, like you had your students that excelled at certain topics. It doesn't matter, like some people are better at literature versus math versus science, but the subject has to be taught in a way that it's accessible to everyone, right? Somebody will get a C, somebody will get an A, a lot of people will get a B. That is not the best way to teach. Yeah. We now have the technology and we have the ability to actually start delivering specific experiences and specific learning to each individual student. Like that was not possible even a few years back. So that's how AI is referenced in this particular segment.
Personalization, customization. Yeah. Awesome. The next one is kind of goes hand in hand. I mean, the next trend is around gamification, and gamification is not new to education. And you know, for ages, teachers have been offering students prizes for reading books and achieving good grades and things like that. And we at Fearless are also thinking through our badges and other things, which we're going to allude to now, but tell you a little bit more in depth later. But there's so many education tools, from you know, simple games to even Minecraft is the most common example. This sandbox style game to create sort of stage performances and things like that, and really get them into the learning flow.
Gamification taps into our basic psychology, right? Mm-hmm. And what we were teaching our cohort, and the reason why we chose this is because psychology is the universal language of how we operate, right? If we were to think of ourselves as computers, psychology is that, and it also allows us to interoperate with other, you know, flash computers. The next one is Google everything. We're going to keep it short. Google is everywhere, right? From Chromebooks to Google Classroom. So I think that's the summary of that topic.
Yeah. The next is just giving you guys information around the accelerating investments in EdTech. So who knows, Fearless may be raising a round, and there's there's a lot of money and investments from venture capital to all kinds of angel investors pouring into EdTech because they want to get this trend right, and it has been on fire. So it's the most well-funded, category these days. So and I, just a side note, if any of your kids that are maybe college aged that are thinking about careers, EdTech is probably one of those really growing careers that they can really take off and make an impact. So just something to think about.
And I'm so happy you used the word impact, because that was my kind of like that just came up because it was very rewarding in the beginning of my career to talk to the users, and they said, like, I didn't have to leave my family, I didn't have to fly somewhere, I didn't have to get a binder of paper in order to learn this topic. I just did everything online. And even back 20 years ago, it was not AI driven, but it was definitely adaptive testing, adaptive content. So if there was a module that taught topic X, there were 20 questions that are associated with this. The person would take the 20 questions, and we would only show the content that the person failed, right? So you only learn those things that you don't know. So this is a 20-year-old technology. We came a bit further. So we covered the investments in that tech, which is obviously very exciting. It's also, so one of our friends mentioned that that concept of the double bottom line. I think he uses slightly different, but like that's what it means. Like, there's a potential to make money, but there's also a potential to make a world a better place, right? Well, not potential, but the reality of making a world a better place. So that is our mission. And the way that we're going to deliver on that mission is by educating and empowering that next generation to be successful. The last one is micro-credentialing. We already mentioned a couple times these concepts of micro bachelor degree, micro master's degree. To give you a quick preview or just a little bit of a glimpse, like, we are very interested, and we will be looking into how we can deliver micro internships to the high school students.
Yeah. Well, more to come, but we wanted to fill you in on the trends. Thank you for staying with us, and would love for you to tell us anything that you've seen that we should research further. And it's always helpful to know as we continue to build our platform. So with that, hope you have a good evening and have a fearless day.
Have a fearless day and the rest of the week.
Bye.